It's her first kiss.
Iconic.
Ronny.
Claire.
Claire is like so mean. Ah, the doorbell. You're fired. XOXO, Gossip Girl.
That was mind-blowing.
Hey Team Duff, it's Whitt. Thanks so much for listening to Duff Enough, the ultimate Hilary Duff fan podcast. This show is a celebration of the life and career of actress, singer, mother, and all-around icon, Hilary Duff. Joining me now to talk Lizzie is my friend, my longtime friend, Claire Rodgers. Hey Claire, welcome to Duff Enough.
Hey Whitt.
Hey, so excited to have you on today. Claire, we have known each other since, I guess, high school, right?
Definitely high school, yes.
And college for a little bit, and now Claire is out in LA doing big things. And Claire and I share a love for Disney, so I feel like we really have bonded over that as friends for sure. And we got to go to Disneyland together for a day, which was really cool.
Yes, and it was your first time there.
It was very exciting. Well, Claire, to begin today, I always ask my new guests on the show 3 questions to kind of get a sense of your Hilary fandom. The first question, what is your favorite Hilary Duff movie?
So my favorite Hilary Duff movie is definitely A Cinderella Story, especially since they used to play it a lot on TV before we had the streaming services and all of that. So it was always easy access to watch the movie. So I've seen it a million times, but it's definitely my favorite. And now it's a meme, the LOL, where she types LOL, that's a meme now.
Right. So many good Hilary Duff memes. Okay, favorite Hilary Duff song?
I would have to say it's Come Clean.
A classic. I mean, don't you love that music video?
Yeah, and it was the theme song of Laguna Beach, which is one of my favorite shows, or was one of my favorite shows, so that's a plus.
Yes, for sure. And finally, what is your favorite episode of Lizzie McGuire?
I believe it is the Grubby Gulch, that one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's different. It was different than all the others, so I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Throw on some low-rise jeans and toss in that butterfly hair clip. It's time for Let's Talk Lizzie.
Jumping into the 5 episodes we are going to talk about today, we're going to be talking about episodes 1 through 5 of Season 2. And Season 2 premiered on February 8th, 2002, with an episode called First Kiss. And I've got to say, honestly, all 5 of these episodes, I was really excited to go back and watch because when I looked at the titles and I looked at what they were about, they were so memorable, and it turns out they were so good. It had been a while since I'd watched them. And so, yeah, starting with First Kiss, this is the Valentine's Day episode. It's so iconic. I mean, it really is. It's her first kiss.
I remember that episode as a kid and just feeling so bad for her and her crying. It just felt so real. She was really acting in these episodes. I was like, okay.
I know. She was getting those tears out there. It was so good. So yeah, so this is the Valentine's Day episode, which it's not super focused on Valentine's Day, but the idea here is that Lizzie, Miranda, and Gordo are noticing that everyone at their school has paired up. Everyone has a boyfriend, a girlfriend, but not them. And so then one day, Lizzie's at home and she's on the phone with Miranda and they're complaining about how they don't have a boyfriend. And then the doorbell rings and it's the paper boy. His name is Ronny. And Lizzie answers the door and this guy starts flirting with her. And then they kind of walk outside and then Lizzie realizes, oh my goodness, I like this boy. And it's like, oh no, we know where this is going now. So This is Lizzie's first boyfriend that we really see on the show. We saw her kiss Aaron Carter under the mistletoe, but this is her first BF and not Ethan Kraft.
Right.
I will say one thing that I noticed immediately, I've been watching the first season of the show for the podcast, and coming into season 2, there had been definitely a length of time where they were not shooting. And so the characters or the actors look a lot older here. But this is how I remembered them looking, honestly. I feel like season 2 episodes got a lot more airplay. These episodes are so much more memorable to me.
Yes, because the class photo one, she was like a baby in that one.
She was, yeah. And it's interesting, too, I noticed, the first season, they did a lot of little cutaways to skit sort of moments. And coming into season 2, they kept a lot of the sound effects. That was something that was throughout the whole show. They would have all these little sound effects and music playing, and they kept that, but they kind of backed away from these little cutaways. It was in a couple of these episodes where they'll be talking about something and then you'll cut away to the scene and you'll see kind of what they're talking about, and it's kind of goofy and comical. We'll get into that. We'll get into that. Back to First Kiss, though. So Lizzie falls hard for this guy, okay? I mean, does she ever? And I love whenever she tells Miranda about him, because they sit down at the lunch table and Lizzie's telling Miranda, you know, she's got a crush on a guy. It's not Ethan Kraft. And she's like, but Miranda, this has to be the cone of silence. No one can know about this. And then Gordo walks up and he's like, what's going on, guys? And Miranda's like, Lizzie's in love with her paper boy. I just died at that because it was so funny. There's so much with this show that I'm noticing how good the writing and comedic timing was. And that was one of those instances for sure.
Yeah.
Jumping over to Matt's storyline for a second. In this episode, Matt is collecting baseball cards, or he has a baseball card collection, and he's trying to get one card in particular for Paul O'Neill, which I had to Google. He's actually a baseball player. And Melina, of course, Matt's girlfriend / nemesis, I don't know what you want to call her, she has the card, and basically to get the card from her, he agrees to wait on her hand and foot, pretty much. So that's his storyline for the episode. We'll check back in with him in a minute. Lizzie, though, Lizzie's relationship kind of blossoms, and you see Ronny sending her love notes in the morning paper. They go out on a date. Didn't you love their little date rollerblading, though? Like, didn't that take you back?
That was cute, yes.
I don't know if you noticed, but they took pictures with this, like, little Polaroid camera. And I had one of those cameras. It was like a long Polaroid camera, and I had to Google what they were called. And it was actually called Polaroid iZone. And I had one of those, and it was red.
I had one, but I never used it.
Well, I think I used it, and then once it ran out of, like, film, I didn't use it anymore.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I miss. Oh man, I want to bring those back.
Yeah. Well, Polaroids had a comeback a few years ago, but not those.
Those, yeah, not the long ones. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, Lizzie is obsessed with Ronny, and Miranda and Gordo get tired of hearing about it. And there's one part where she's like, Lizzie's saying that she might nickname him Pudding. And I don't know why, but I remembered that because she's like, pudding, 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 pudding. Now, here's something I noticed. In season 1, we don't really get a lot of like Gordo-Lizzie potential relationship. Like, that's not something that's mentioned very much in the first season of the show. But right here at the beginning of season 2, Gordo tells Miranda that he'd never really thought about what it would be like if Lizzie got a boyfriend. And Miranda asks if he's jealous. And he's like, no, I don't think so. And it's just like, oh, we have set this in motion. So we know kind of where things are going to be going. And then on their date, when Lizzie and Ronny kiss, who do we see in the background but Gordo?
That right there is an iconic moment in Disney Channel, Lizzie Mcguire history. That is iconic. That moment right there where they like pull apart and Gordo's standing right there. That is definitely iconic.
I know.
Just something about seeing it for the first time when you're a child. It was just so dramatic. Like that whole episode, that was like a Degrassi episode. That whole episode was dramatic.
Yes. But there he is with his jaw dropped, and it's just like, Gordo. Like, we know that Gordo has feelings for Lizzie. And so Ronny and Lizzie officially become a couple, and he even gives her his ring, or a ring. And Lizzie goes back home. She's like on cloud 9 after getting her first kiss, and her parents are like, what is going on? You cannot have a boyfriend. And here's a line that I wrote down because I loved it. And she tells her parents, she's like, FYI, every girl in my grade has a boyfriend. And her mom goes, does Miranda have a boyfriend? And Lizzie says, no. And isn't that so, like, that's such a parent thing to do?
Yeah.
Her dad was like, well, there goes that argument. But that's something that you say to your parents.
I've definitely been in several of those moments.
Yes, for sure. But anyway, Lizzie does continue to date Ronny for what? Maybe a week. And there's a part where Miranda and Lizzie are in her bedroom. And I remembered this, where Lizzie's on the phone with Ronny and they're going to say goodbye. And she's like, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. No, you hang up first.
And then Miranda hangs up.
Yes. At this point, Miranda and Lizzie, they get into a little argument because Lizzie tells Miranda the only reason she's mad is because she doesn't have a boyfriend. And I was like, oh, watch out, Lizzie. And so then they kind of fight for a second. Let's jump back to Matt's storyline here. He does all of Melina's chores, like making her brownies, walking the dog, all this stuff. And then she decides she's going to give him her baseball card, but he has to give her his dad's baseball card collection. And whenever Matt's dad finds out that he gives the collection away, he's not happy, so he takes Matt's new collection. So cute little Matt storyline, as always, as always. The climax here for this episode, Ronny comes over and says, we need to talk. And oh my word, those words though, those 4 words. Lizzie's mom does not want her to go with him at this point because she knows what's coming. And when they go outside, Ronny tells Lizzie there's a girl at his school who likes him, and he says he likes her too. And I mean, the heartbreak, man. I mean, Lizzie gives him his ring back and he's like, Lizzie, can't we still be friends? But she just walks away in tears. And right then and there, Lizzie just had her first heartbreak. And it got me. It got me. Rewatching this episode, I was like, no, like, I hate this guy.
And his reasoning too, like what a guy, like his reasoning. Oh, there's this girl in my school, you know, she's just there. And then if this was real life, I'm sure a few months later he probably came crawling back and she was over it by then. So,
oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, and it prepared me for the future.
As the episode ends, I love what happens here. And this scene is kind of iconic too, but
my favorite scene.
Yeah, I love this. Gordo finds Lizzie in the library and she's crying. She's tearing up her love notes and doodles about Ronny. And he's brought her a chocolate chip cookie from the cafeteria. So sweet. Basically, Lizzie tells him, Ronny broke up with me for another girl. And then she says she's probably prettier than me and smarter than me and a lot more fun. And Gordo tells her there's no one prettier or more fun to be around. And then Lizzie's like, you forgot smarter. And he said, well, I was including me in that too, because, Gordo's like the whiz kid.
It was just a really sweet, really good response. And I think everyone needs someone like that in their life for that type of reassurance when you're feeling that type of way.
Right. And Gordo, he says Ronny's going to regret it for the rest of his life. And, Lizzie's like, oh, Gordo, you're a good friend. And then Gordo almost says something else, but he doesn't. And it's just like,
Yes.
And then, at the very end of the episode, Miranda comes back and they have a little group hug and that's it. I mean, wow, we got Lizzie's whole first relationship in a matter of 23 minutes. So
like they did a lot in 23 minutes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a sitcom. So, you get into a situation and you solve it. But any other thoughts on that episode?
That's just an iconic Lizzie Mcguire episode. It's just so emotional. And I mean, Hilary did a really good job with the crying. And I mean, it didn't look corny it looked really real. Like she looked like she was really crying real tears. Because I know, especially these newer Disney shows, I definitely don't think they could pull off something like that at all. So it's just amazing to see just how the shows were back then and how more relatable. It just felt real.
I'm telling you, we got so lucky with the era we grew up with.
For sure.
Next episode here, we have El Oro del Montezuma, which I looked up the translation for, and it is the gold of Montezuma. So this episode, now Claire, I did not know that we were going to get like a lesson in culture here, but that is what we got.
Yeah, so okay, for one, I have seen this, but I completely forgot about this episode, and I definitely don't remember it being that much of a lesson.
But it was, and I was shocked.
Yeah, I was like, okay, Disney.
This episode premiered on February 22nd, 2002. And basically, the idea here is that Lizzie, Gordo, and Miranda go on a Spanish game show. And I did remember them going on the game show, and I remember it was kind of a disaster. But like I said, didn't remember any of this whole, cultural lesson of it all. So here's what happens. So Miranda's cousin is supposed to be on this game show. He winds up meeting some new teammates, so Lizzie, Miranda, Gordo agree to do the show with him, but he is going to have to be their translator because it's in Spanish and they don't speak Spanish. Not even Miranda, really, which is kind of funny because I remember in the Halloween episode, she did speak a little more Spanish and she was a little more knowledgeable, so continuity issue there.
Yeah.
At the same time that this is kind of unfolding, Lizzie At Lizzie's school, there's a new kid from Indonesia. His name is Lee, and he doesn't really speak English, but Lizzie, she tries to befriend him. She gets a little frustrated because he's not understanding what she's saying. And, of course, the lesson here from Mr. Dig, love him, he's talking about different cultures and traditions. And he says, our culture is a lot richer because of the contributions from other cultures. And I'm like, preach, like we need this right now, Mr. Dig, come on. But Lizzie has to write a report about a different culture. So that's the idea. And when they end up doing this game show, she thinks she's going to write her report about that experience. It doesn't really go as they were hoping. And they practice, to prepare for it, they practice all these stunts that they're going to have to do. But they also practice Spanish a little bit. But Lizzie's like, I think we need to spend more time on the stunts instead of the Spanish. That was not a good idea. So when they get on the show, they have to do stuff like pop balloons between their chests. And I think they have to dress Gordo up as like a mariachi band player or something. But Carlos, Miranda's cousin, who is their translator, remember, he gets put into a glass box at one point. And he's separated from the team, so he can no longer translate for them. And so at this point, Lizzie, Miranda, and Gordo have to try to figure out what they're supposed to be doing. And they have this huge tub of rice pudding, and they have these boxes, and they have no idea. They have these ladles. And so they wind up just like throwing the rice pudding at each other, and it was super messy, but it was super fun, and I loved it. Looking at a show like That's So Raven, we saw a lot more of this sort of thing on that show. We didn't see sort of the messy situation so much on Lizzie McGuire, so it was kind of nice and fun to see that on this episode. But yeah, anything to say about like the game show and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I guess rewinding back to how Lizzie said, we probably don't need to learn as much about the vocabulary as we do the physical part. And if they had just learned maybe a few basic words that would be used on the show, she wouldn't have. So I think maybe they learned what the word pyramid meant. Just that's all they needed to know was like learn what the word pyramid meant, and they would have been okay. But just basically like a few words. So I think that also is what the lesson.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's kind of what I had for the lesson of the episode. And during the game show, I think either Animated Lizzie or Lizzie herself even says, now I know what Lee feels like. And so it was, a full circle moment. At the beginning of the episode, she's getting frustrated when this, new kid from another country doesn't understand her. And now she's like, oh, I get it. And when we come back to school for the day that they present their reports, Lizzie, she says originally she was going to do her report on the game show experience, but what she learned was that she needs to learn about other cultures because, we're all here together, and she apologizes to Lee for kind of losing her patience with him, and she ends up doing her report on Indonesia, where he's from. So I loved what the lesson of this episode turned out to be, and I loved the assignment that they had and just everything about it because it's so true. Like, I know for me, Claire, we grew up in the same small town, and just getting out of that town even and meeting people from just other walks of life and other cultures. I mean, it was so eye-opening, and I'm so thankful like I went to college and got to experience that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and also it's just kind of a good thing for when new kids come to the school or just new people at your workplace or different environments, and they don't speak English as a first language. They speak their native language along with some English versus some of us who can barely speak English, let alone two languages. So I think that kind of helps too because it is hard. It's not easy, and it appears to us.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but my 2 years of Spanish in high school, it didn't carry over that well, sadly.
It didn't carry over.
So I didn't know a lot of the words that were being said on this episode in Spanish. I do want to mention Matt's storyline. In this episode, he and Lanny were playing this epic game of hide and go seek, which was actually pretty funny. And I love how at the end, when Lanny kind of gives up on finding Matt, Matt's mom is like, Lanny, aren't you supposed to yell Ollie Ollie oxen free? But Lanny doesn't talk. So she's like, oh, stupid question. And then we see Matt, he's like hiding on a train and the train starts moving. I don't know how realistic that was, but I don't know. I enjoyed the Matt storyline in this one. It was cute.
So cute.
Moving on to the next episode, Mom's Best Friend. This premiered on March 8th, 2002. Another good one, I gotta say. I loved this one.
This was really cute.
In this episode, Mr. Digg assigns books to the class to read, and the girls are having to read a book about mother-daughter relationship, the boys a father-son relationship, and Lizzie, she's not originally super excited about the subject matter, but she ends up loving the book, and she even gets kind of emotional about it, and so she automatically wants to be friends with her mom when she's reading this. And I liked the moment when, she's sitting in bed reading the book, and then we see the story play out of what she's reading as like a black and white classic movie, and Lizzie is there and her mom's there, and it's Welcome to the Orchids and Gumbo Society, and her mom's like, I love you, sweet potato, and it's cute. I liked it.
And they looked gorgeous. I was like, oh my gosh, they looked really pretty.
Yeah. So then Lizzie and her mom do become friends, and Lizzie takes her mom to the Digital Bean. Miranda and Gordo's reaction to Lizzie bringing her mom and being friends with her mom, so funny. And Miranda gets the best one-liners. And when her mom shows up, Miranda's just automatically confesses, she said, we didn't break your hobo figurine. That's a moment where I was talking about where they do a little cutaway, because then we saw this sequence where you see Lizzie and Gordo and Miranda breaking the figurine with a football, and her mom seeing it and all this. So that was kind of what I was talking about with the little cutaway deal. But loved that one-liner from Miranda. And then Gordo tells Lizzie, this is when Lizzie's mom is kind of away for a second, and Gordo's like, parents sacrifice to provide for us, and in return we have as little to do with them as possible. It's nature's law. And Miranda, she plays out this whole scenario how parents, you get home from school and they're like, how was your day? I don't know. What are you gonna do tonight? I don't know. Why don't you ever talk to me? Just leave me alone. That's so true.
The whole time I just kept thinking, how would I react if I was in Miranda and Gordo's situation? It's funny, but I guess for me, I'm just I don't think I would ever do that or care that much. But it was cute. Right. Just seeing her want to spend time with her mom. And I thought something would happen to where the mom would end up feeling bad about something. Mm-hmm. Where she would care that they didn't want to be around her. I kind of was expecting that because I didn't remember how the episode played out, so I was just I really hope they don't do anything to hurt the mom's feelings. That's what I just kept thinking, because I was waiting on them to do something like that, but I'm glad that didn't happen.
And I feel like that's happened on other episodes for sure.
The episodes with the jeans and all that. I thought something like that was going to happen, so I'm glad that didn't happen.
Right. Or even the bra episode, when Lizzie and Miranda tell her mom they don't want her there picking out the bras.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Yeah. So Lizzie and her mom continue hanging out, and they do pottery together. And I love the moment when Lizzie puts the broken piece of pointy plastic in her mom's clay, and that comes in later as a little moment at the end. But so while they are doing pottery, Lizzie's mom gets a call about Nana Mcguire, and this is where, the conflict rises. Basically, Lizzie's mom finds out that Nana Mcguire wants a separation from Grandpa Chuck. And Lizzie, she starts getting worried, and she isn't sure she wants to know this much about adult reality, which as an adult now, and I say that lightly, it's oh, wow, I wish I could go back to being a kid and not have worries like that, because man, good times. Mm-hmm. And there's one point where the mom tells her that there was a time when the dad was having some money problems or a tax issue with the government, and the government got him confused with Bill Gates or something. And I was like, oh my goodness, right. Really? Miranda and Gordo, though, they actually decide to hang out with their parents at one point. And then Miranda's mom, she was super excited. I love Miranda's mom, but she was super ready to go to the mall and buy things for Miranda. But in the end, the day hanging out with their parents actually didn't turn out so good. Gordo, I think, got sprayed by a skunk or something with his dad. They were going to go fishing. So things didn't go so well for them. And Lizzie, she eventually has to talk to her mom about what's going on. And everything turns out okay with Nana Mcguire. She and Grandpa Chuck make up. But basically, Lizzie, she's just saying she isn't sure she wants to know about reality yet. And she says eventually she'll be ready to hang with her mom. But at this point, it's just not the right time. So maybe in a few years. And her mom gives her the pointy hunk of broken plastic and tells her she can give it back when she's ready to be friends with her again. And I loved that for them. I was like, oh.
That was sweet. That ended up being a really sweet episode, so that was good.
Yeah, it tied a little bow around it for sure. Matt's storyline here, he and Lanny were getting framed by a chimp breaking stuff around the house, and Sam is like, grounding Matt. The owners of the chimp actually come and get him at the end after Matt and Lanny use their dad as bait to catch the chimpanzee. And I mean, literally a real chimpanzee. And I think this monkey comes back in another episode too, where they babysit or something, the chimp. So the very end of the episode, we see that Lizzie is back at the Digital Bean, and she is with her mom, but her mom's just dropping her off, and she's going to stay with Miranda and Gordo, and, none of them are going to be friends with their parents like that. And we see that Lizzie has the piece of plastic on her charm bracelet, and I was like, aw, and she, smiles back at her mom, and I loved it. Great ending. Great episode.
It was good. It was very sweet. I'm sure a lot of people a lot of kids ran out and tried to hang out with their parents after this episode.
Maybe. Not me.
Okay, good episode. Next.
Yeah. All right. Now we have The Rise and Fall of Kate. The Rise and Fall of the Kate Empire. This premiered on March 15th, 2002. And Claire, there is a character in this episode who kind of takes the spotlight for a minute. Do you know who I'm talking about? Claire, yes. Okay, so how did you feel having this character with your name, the same name as yours on the show?
I loved her. I know that sounds horrible, but I loved her, even though she was a villain. I just remember really liking her because I thought she was really pretty. She was a girl of color. Her name was Claire, and she was a cheerleader. So I just remember, when I was growing up, I wish I had seen more of her. Right.
So she's played by Davita Williams, so let's give her a shout out there. But in this episode, Claire is so mean. Here's what happens. Okay, I love how at the beginning of the episode, we kind of get this mean girls you can't sit with us situation because there aren't enough lunch tables for everyone to have a seat at lunch. And the cheerleaders did not let Lizzie, Miranda, and Gordo sit with them. So they wind up sitting in the grass. And Lizzie says, she wishes Kate could feel what it's like to sit in the grass and, someone should come knock her off her pedestal. Well, the cheerleaders do a cheer at lunch, which, we should mention you were a cheerleader, Claire.
Just like Claire.
So when they do a pyramid, Kate falls off the top of the pyramid, and it's Lizzie made that happen somehow. But she dislocates her shoulder, and it's she fell from grace because Claire's Kate, you can no longer sit with us. You cannot be a cheerleader with a dislocated shoulder and a sling. And Claire is the new captain. And Claire's a tough cookie. I mean, whoo.
Yeah, so she was definitely worse than Kate, I guess. It was funny. It was cool to see them play up on this stereotypes and everyone, stays in their place. And it was just funny because I wish I went to that school. I would just be happy that I was eating outside. I wouldn't even care about the grass. That's just how different the school is.
Well, here's the thing that I love about Lizzie in this episode. We get a good glimpse at Lizzie's character and her heart because Lizzie feels bad for Kate. Kate is her enemy, and that just goes to show that Lizzie cares about people, and I love that about her. And we see that throughout the whole series, but we see it here for sure. We even see Kate sitting in the grass, and Lizzie is feeling bad about it. Gordo and Miranda, not so much. They even sing Ding Dong, the Wicked Witch is Dead at one point about this. But Lizzie, she doesn't know why she feels bad for Kate. Regardless, she decides to help her. She gets Gordo and Miranda to help her too because, they're kind of all okay, Claire needs to stop and we need to get Kate back because Kate is at least better than Claire. There was kind of a reference to an older episode because Lizzie tells Kate when she was in rhythmic gymnastics, most of her stunts were one-handed. And you may remember the rhythmic gymnastics episode from the first season where Lizzie did do stunts. And, Hilary, it's always been said that she did her own stunts on this show. So I'm sure that when she did these one-handed cartwheels, that was really her. And she helped teach Kate. I want to give a shout out to the music group Jump 5 because their song was used. Do you remember Jump 5?
I do remember Jump 5 a little bit. Yeah, I kind of forgot about them.
So Jump 5, Spinning Around, is played whenever Kate is learning to do a one-handed cartwheel. Once Kate learns how to do these stunts one-handed, she tells Lizzie this is not going to change anything, but, thanks anyway. And then Kate goes and confronts Claire. She does the one-handed cartwheels. She basically shows up Claire because Claire tries and like hurts her wrist and she winds up in a sling. And Lizzie's comment about all of this is like, you know, she can't believe Kate didn't learn a lesson. But at the very end, we do see that Kate actually invites Claire to like come back and sit with them. And she doesn't like, you know, shun Claire like Claire did to her. So kind of a sweet ending. This episode, it's not, you know, the most realistic, obviously. And I wouldn't say that this lesson was as great as some of the others, maybe, but I enjoyed this episode. And we got to talk about Matt's storyline really quick. The actor who plays him, Jake Thomas, references this a lot. If you follow him on social media, Matt is going to be in a play at school. He has one line, and it is, the doorbell. I'll get that.
I will say I do like this Matt storyline.
Yeah. Even though he has like this very small role in the play, he becomes a diva and like his parents have to intervene and Lanny gets mad at him. But then at the very end, you know, he winds up having to apologize, but he loses his voice. He gets Lanny to go on for him, which I'm like, but wait a minute, Lanny doesn't talk. So I guess that was kind of supposed to be funny there. But any other thoughts on this episode?
I mean, just overall, it was a good episode. It was a cute, girly episode. You got to see more of Claire, which I liked. I wish we had more episodes focused on Claire and Kate a little bit more, maybe. I like this one.
The last episode we're going to be talking about today is called Working Girl. It premiered on March 29th, 2002. And this is another one that I remembered very well. It's when Lizzie gets her first job as a busboy, her first part-time job.
Yes, I definitely remember this one. For some reason, I really specifically remember her rolling the silverware. And then this episode was my favorite Matt storyline out of all of them because it was just really cute.
Yes, I do like the Matt storyline in this episode too. One thing we haven't talked about are like the outfits. Did any like stand out in these episodes for you? Because I meant to mention the cat shirt that she wore in the first Kiss episode. I remembered that one really well. But, you know, I mean, all of these crazy early 2000s outfits though.
Right. So I wanted all of Lizzie's outfits. Every outfit I would have worn, all of those growing up. Her and Miranda, I mean, they kind of had similar styles. This episode particularly, Miranda's style was just on point. The plaid with the hat and like the way her pigtails with the way they were tied up in the rubber bands. I mean, Miranda had always had the best hairstyle. I just loved her hair, her style. Like, she was just so cool to me.
Did you ever play the DisneyChannel.com game?
Yeah. I played that, and then she also had a board game.
I think I had the board game.
Yeah, I remember that. And then there was, what was it? Oh, and when I had AOL, I had her voice as my, like, greeting. Like, when you open it, she would be like, hey, what's up?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, man, that's old.
Yeah. Back to Working Girl. It is so relatable as an adult. Like, Lizzie's having to adult for the first time ever, and it's just, I feel you. I feel you, Lizzie.
Yeah, this episode was great.
At the beginning of the episode, Lizzie is wanting an allowance from her parents, but they're like, no. And she wants, you know, independence and freedom because what teenager doesn't? But then they go to the Digital Bean, and the Digital Bean is hiring for a busboy. So Lizzie gets that job. And at first she thinks it's like, it rocks and whatnot, but then it's like a lot of work and she's not loving it so much. And you mentioned the silverware, and that to me, like, I loved how she rolled up the one and she was like, wow, I accomplished so much. And then like you see the big pile and it's like, oh, don't you just feel that way sometimes?
Yes, every day.
Every day. Lizzie's parents aren't super happy about her getting a job because they're telling her work is a big responsibility. She just needs to be a kid and all this stuff. But they're going to let her do it, and they're going to give her a chance. So Lizzie keeps working as the busboy. It's not getting any easier. Kate and Claire actually are making her job even harder by, like, making messes. And then one morning, her dad comes in her bedroom and gives her a little speech. So you want to talk about that?
She thought he was really going to come in and scold her for it, but he came in and he was just like, you know, if you don't have to do this. Like, one of your responsibilities as a child is to make good grades, stay out of trouble, hang out with your friends. And he's like, you're already doing that, so you don't have to work. Because some parents would be like, yeah, you better keep that job, and I'm tired of paying these bills for you. Like, you know, you just never know. So it was really nice seeing him say that, and this is really nice.
And I feel like maybe 2 years down the line, her parents probably would be like, get a job. But at 14, like, you really can't even have a job at 14, you know? They were stretching the truth a little bit there, I do believe. So loved that little speech from Dad. And Lizzie ends up getting super annoyed by the customers, and she goes off. Like, there's this guy who he wants a clean spoon, and there's a kid who keeps dropping his crumbs on the floor. Like, she went off.
She's like, sir, you are eating a bagel. You do not need a spoon for a bagel.
I loved that. I loved that. She kind of goes off on everyone at the Digital Bean, including her boss. And her boss is like, do you feel better now? And she's like, yeah. And then her boss says, good, because you're fired. So Lizzie gets fired, which we knew that was coming, right? We knew that was coming. Let's talk about Matt's storyline, because as you said, it really is a good one. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So basically, he is having relationship issues with Melina, who is his girlfriend / friend / nemesis, and she's been getting another boy in school in trouble. So Matt's really upset. He's going through it. He's having relationship issues, and he's like, I really need to talk to a girl, but Lizzie's busy. And then Gordo's like, hello, Miranda's a girl. And so he's like, oh, yeah, Miranda is. So it's just kind of funny seeing how he's never really looked at her as anything other than just Lizzie's friend. Like, he's never had any sort of feelings or crush or anything for her. Well, then Miranda gives Matt some really good advice and just reminding him that he's a good kid and any girl would be lucky to get him in trouble or something along the lines of that. And so then he just instantly starts falling for Miranda, which, I mean, that makes sense because I know if I was young and some older guy was telling me, I'm a great kid, like, I mean, I probably would have a crush on him too. So, and she's gorgeous, so I can see why he would have that. So it just clicked in his head that he would start being interested in Miranda. So then he kind of becomes obsessive and making shirts with his face on it, has a button with her face on it, put I love Miranda on his bike, sends balloons to her house, is calling her all the time. It was just so cute because, like, she was so annoyed by it. It was just cute seeing, like, she didn't want to hurt his feelings either. Like, she never really told him that she was annoyed. She just kind of kept playing it along, but you could see that she was annoyed. And also what I like is that Lizzie didn't know any of this was going on. So it was just kind of seeing the separate lives, and that was really cute.
But in the end, it all kind of comes together. And, you know, when Miranda is finally going to tell Matt, like, hey, I'm not really your girlfriend, like, first of all, Melina shows up and she's like, excuse me, Miranda, you are the rebound. This is my man. And, like, takes Matt away, which was hilarious. So funny.
So the rumors are true, just because you can't get a guy your own age.
Yes. Loved that. But then Lizzie comes home and she's like, you know, I got fired. And she says, are you guys hungry? And she pulls a cake out of the fridge and the frosting on it, you know, says like, I heart Miranda. And so that Lizzie doesn't see, because Miranda and Gordo agree never to tell Lizzie about this, Miranda just takes her hands and like brushes off the icing. And Miranda says, frosting's the best part. I mean, just a great ending. Loved it. Well, that finishes up our 5 episodes that we were going to talk about today, Claire. And just as an overall kind of conclusion, what did Lizzie Mcguire mean to you in your childhood?
Lizzie Mcguire, when I think of Lizzie Mcguire, honestly, like, I really just think of my best friend who lived 2 doors down. We would just spend, especially in the summer, we would just spend all day together. And then in between those moments, we would watch episodes of Lizzie Mcguire. And really, that's one of the main shows I just remember watching with my friends. So I just really miss that. And I always kind of admired her lifestyle, admired her style, her fashion. I used to pick up little things that she would do and, you know, end up doing it myself. So it just really is a huge staple point of my childhood.
Oh, love it. Well, for today's Remember When segment, Claire, and this is a segment where I touch on a Hilary subject that I don't have a whole episode to spend on, but, you know, want to give it a mention. And we are going to talk about her guest arc on Gossip Girl.
Yes.
And this is very different from Lizzie Mcguire, so we really got to shift gears.
Yes, this is definitely shifting gears on a whole different car on a whole different interstate.
Yes, yes. Okay, so Hilary guest starred on 6 episodes of Gossip Girl, the 3rd season of that show, and this was back in 2009. And I actually haven't watched these episodes since they originally aired, but they were honestly so good, and I remember them pretty well. I did look up some YouTube clips to kind of refresh my memory. I'm not sure I would recommend that because a lot comes up in regards to Hilary's guest appearance on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Hilary played a famous actress named Olivia Burke, and she was the star of this vampire movie series called The Endless Nights. And remember, this was around the same time as like Twilight and everything. And she wound up being, she was Vanessa's roommate and she was Dan's girlfriend. Now, you're a big fan of this show, right?
Yes.
So, what did you think of Hilary's time on XOXO Gossip Girl?
I don't know. Something about who she is matched the character really well. It made sense her playing this role because something like this could have actually happened to her where she went to college. And so that it was like her playing herself a little bit.
Yeah. So the idea is this famous actress wants to have, this college experience at NYU. And the episode, moment of her guest appearance is the episode where Dan and Vanessa are trying to mark off this list of things for her to do while she's in college, because it ends up, at the end, she's going to go off to do a movie or something. But they have a threesome. What?
Just her whole character was definitely not what we're used to seeing, the squeaky clean Hilary Duff, which she's done a really good job of maintaining that nice, clean image. So it was just really, just even other scenes where you see her cussing and just seeing her as a whole different character and just the things she wore. So it was really nice. But definitely the threesome episode, that was mind-blowing because it was even mind-blowing for the other characters to do something like that. So it wasn't even just her. It was just the whole scene was mind-blowing for anyone who watched the show.
Girl, you're telling me I didn't even know what a threesome was until this episode of Gossip Girl.
Hey, yeah.
I was very innocent. And I was probably 14 when this came out. So I guess it's not, maybe that's pretty bad, but no, I didn't know. And I just remember being what is happening right now? And then I got to school the next day and people were talking about it and explaining that's a thing. And I'm okay, all right. But no, you are so right. This was a departure for her, but it was so good to sort of see her grown up because she hadn't done a role like this really in her career, especially mainstream. So this was the first time that people were really seeing her in a more grown-up role, in a more adult character, and it was a good place for her to go, I feel like. This was a very popular show. She fit right in. Her performance was great. She looked fantastic, and she did a good job. And the threesome, that was a shocking moment for the whole show. You are right, and it was definitely shocking for Hilary Duff, but I don't think it was a shock factor Miley Cyrus, gone bad. It wasn't like that.
The subject matter wasn't PG, but the way it was shot was very PG. So it was good. She still was able to maintain her image, and it was done as tasteful and as classy as possible for that subject.
For sure, yeah. I also made a note that during her arc on the show, on Gossip Girl, there were several other famous guest stars, namely Tyra Banks starred on her episodes, Jimmy Fallon. I didn't remember this, but Olivia actually went on Jimmy Fallon's show, which was not even The Tonight Show at that point.
That's good. I don't know, because Tyra Banks did horrible in her role, so thank gosh Hilary killed hers, because Tyra did not.
It was a strange role for Tyra.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all.
Now, this is the big one. Lady Gaga was on one of her episodes, and she performed Bad Romance. And I have to say, I was not a Lady Gaga stan until this episode. I remember when she was on there and she sang Bad Romance, that's when I became obsessed with that song and obsessed with Lady Gaga, was when she was on Gossip Girl. And I may have never seen that. I could have missed that if Hilary Duff had not been on there. So, thank you, Hilary Duff, for basically introducing me to Lady Gaga. And there was actually this whole play that they do on the episode where they're singing Lady Gaga songs, and Hilary sings a little bit of Love Game. So that was cool.
That was cute. It was.
When it all goes down in the end, it's Dan has feelings for Vanessa, and Olivia points this out to him, and then she's go be with her. And I think Dan and Vanessa stayed together for a while after that.
Yeah, they ended up being a couple for a little bit.
Yeah. I did read where Hilary's character, Olivia, got a shout out in the series finale. So clearly, she had a big impact on that show. And like I said, people are still talking about it.
Yeah, it was great. She definitely left her mark.
And finally today, Claire, I'm going to give you a trivia question in a segment I like to call Lizzie Mcguire. It will be multiple choice, so don't panic. So, Prior to her appearance on Gossip Girl, Hilary was actually rumored, or it was reported, that she had been offered a role as a lead cast member on another CW series. A, The Vampire Diaries, B, 90210, the reboot, or C, Smallville.
Okay, ooh.
You can guess.
Okay, I'll go with 90210.
That is correct. Yeah, she was that a total guess?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so E! News reported that Hilary was offered the lead role of Annie Wilson on that show. And, I don't know that it was necessarily ever confirmed that that was a thing, but it does make sense because the producer or the creator of that show, Darren Star, actually is also the creator of the show Hilary is on now called Younger, and he offered her a role on that show. So I think it probably was true, but Hilary turned it down, and her mom would have actually been Lori Loughlin on the show.
Ooh.
So that could have been interesting nowadays. Well, Claire, this has been so much fun, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and taking the time to rewatch the episodes. And yeah, it's been fun chatting with you about Lizzie today.
Yes, thank you so much for asking me. I really enjoy this, and I would love to do this again, so just let me know.
Well, Claire Rodgers, thanks so much for being on Duff Enough.
Thank you.
And that's all for this episode of Duff Enough. Thanks again for listening. I hope you'll subscribe and stick around for more because this podcast is what dreams are made of. You can follow along on social media at Duff Enough Pod and check the description for my socials as well as show guests. And until next time, bye Team Duff.